Greetings all, Ferrari-Man601 here. Welcome back to another 1/400 scale diecast model aircraft review of this, the Boeing 747-8 in 1/400 scale by Gemini Jets. This is one of the newer releases from Gemini Jets. This is a May 2020 release, so it is essentially brand new, and I haven't seen too much material on this one so far on YouTube. I've seen a couple, but for the most part, just reasonably short videos talking about generally what the model looks like and some people critiquing it. But what I want to do is just take a little bit more of an in-depth look at it, talk about the history of the 747 and specifically the -8 project, and just generally let you take a closer look at some of the finer details on this model, as well as give some very gentle constructive criticisms about a couple of the assembly things. But for the most part, I do have to say that this is yet another very nicely done 747 in 1/400 by Gemini Jets. These guys are probably the best overall in the business in terms of what they're able to give you dollar for dollar, although sometimes they can be a little bit inconsistent with some of their molds on some other types of aircraft. But their 747 is good, and it has been good, and if the -8 is anything to go by, I think their 747s will continue to be good moving forward as, of course, the 747 series continues to evolve. The -8 project, of course, it is an evolution of the venerable 747, as Gemini Jets call it in their box description. Of course, the 747 has been flying since 1969, and it has gone through several iterations as Boeing continues to get smarter about how this aircraft operates and ways that they can further optimize the design and manufacture process for this wonderful aircraft. Let's take a look at what Gemini Jets have given us in 1/400 scale of one of their newest releases, the 747-8 in 1/400 here in Lufthansa colors. First off, a look at the box of this 747-8. Here it is. Not going to be able to get the whole thing in frame because of the close range situation going on here, but you can see it is the typical Gemini Jets box, but they have gone silver and black here to try and reflect the livery of the aircraft. But there we are. Gemini Jets in the upper left, and then the upper right, made for collectors by collectors, and then a rendering of the aircraft front and center here, obviously with gear retracted. Looks very nice, and roughly the same size as the actual model, believe it or not. Down there, right and below center, Boeing 747-8, and then the registration Delta Alpha Bravo Yankee Charlie, Lufthansa with the Lufthansa logo. 1/400 scale diecast model aircraft, and then of course you've got your look inside tab, which is typical of the Gemini Jets. If you do lift the tab to look inside, you end up seeing this little blurb about the aircraft, as we always see with Gemini models, Boeing 747-8, and then of course you get this little blurb about the aircraft, its history, and a little bit of technical information about it. This is actually all the same as the VC-25B Air Force One proposal that Gemini also recently released. And then, of course, we get specifications on the archetypical model here. Boeing 747-8 livery is in Lufthansa. The new Lufthansa livery aircraft type is Boeing 747-830. Serial number 37828, line number 1451, registration Delta Alpha Bravo Yankee Charlie. Engines are 4 GEnx-2B67s. First flight of this particular airframe was 7th of June 2012, and it was delivered on July 1st of 2012. And then specifications: maximum takeoff weight 975,100 pounds, cruising speed 572 miles per hour, range 8,080 miles, and then it shows the seating configurations here. Very, very cool. Obviously, in schematic view, you now have the aircraft viewed from the side as well as from above. Overall length, 250 feet 4 inches. Height from the ground to the top of the tail, 63 feet 8 inches. And wingspan, 224 feet 5 inches. Obviously, the center here, this is the cavity where the aircraft would be. On the side of the box now, Gemini Jets, 1/400 scale die-cast model. And actually, you can see that the 1 has been cut off there, so that's interesting, as has the I in the word item. But item number here is GJDLH1779. For those of you keeping score, then you get the Boeing 747-8 registration, another rendering of the aircraft. The back panel, you get yet another rendering of the aircraft, this time from the starboard side in a steep climb, it appears, as real as it gets, and then information about Gemini Jets, all of their selling points, things like that. there is your Boeing officially licensed product of the 747, produced under license from the Boeing Management Company. 747 and Boeing are among the trademarks owned by Boeing. Lufthansa, officially licensed product. And there's the Lufthansa information, made in China. Copyright 2020, Gemini Jets, Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. And that just about covers it for the box on this thing. Very nice box. I like the silver paint, but of course it is your typical Gemini box otherwise in terms of giving you some information about the aircraft, and I always appreciate that. I wish other manufacturers would do the same. In the world of civil aviation, there are only so many players out there. In terms of the long-haul, long-range, wide-body commercial jets, there are really only two manufacturers out there at the present moment, and they would be Boeing and Airbus. Of course, the flagship of the Boeing fleet is the 747, and it has been since its first flight all the way back in 1969 in the 747-100 variant. The evolution of the 747 series continues in the present day, with its latest iteration seen here, the 747-8I Intercontinental, as well as the 747-8F for freight. The 8I, or simply -8, is obviously the passenger variant, with the 8F being reserved for cargo duties. As civil jets evolve along the same genealogy in terms of this is a 747, and we have had 747s in the sky since 1969, the design changes a little bit here and there as they get smarter about manufacturing these aircraft, as well as they continue to gather data, flight data, as well as data from testing and from manufacturing, problems that they run into, things that they try that work, things that they try that don't work, and all of this learning is able to be incorporated in later iterations of the aircraft. Of course, the 747 has gone through 100, 200, 300, and 400 variants before this, and now going into the -8 series, they've learned a lot about how this aircraft operates. They've learned a lot about how to fly them, how to make them, and how to run them more cost-effectively and more efficiently. And that is exactly what the goal of the -8 project is. We want to optimize an already sound design in the 747, but we want to increase its range, we want to increase its passenger capacity, we want to increase its efficiency, both in terms of burning fuel, as well as trying to streamline certain maintenance aspects, as well as just simply trying to emit less harmful things into the atmosphere. So, that is where the -8 comes in. The -8 first flew, actually its first flight was in the freight configuration on February 8th, 2010, and just over 1 year later, the -8I would follow, making its first flight on March 20th, 2011. The -8 first started commercial service with Cargolux, actually, on the 12th of October 2011. And of course, that was the 8F configuration. The aircraft entered passenger service in its 8I configuration with Lufthansa on June 1st, 2012. The aircraft remains in service today in 2020, its primary users being Lufthansa, Korean Air, Cargolux, and Cathay Pacific Cargo. Being produced between 2008 and 2020, and production is still ongoing. As of December of 2019, 138 units of the 8 had been produced at a unit cost for the 8F of $418.7 million and $419.2 million for the 8I, the passenger variant. Obviously, its direct ancestor is the 747-400, and as we covered in one of the other reviews that I have done so far on this channel, this aircraft is serving as the basis for development for the VC-25B, which is the military variant of this aircraft, and that will be used to transport the President of the United States beginning in 2024. So, obviously, if the U.S. Air Force and the President can trust the Boeing 747 to take them places quickly and safely, I think this aircraft has a very bright future ahead of it. And seeing the already very long life that the 747 series has had, I think the -8 project is going to be something that is viable both economically and otherwise from Boeing. Definitely a good idea to keep the 747 current so that they can continue operating this aircraft well into the 21st century. Overall specifications on the 747-8, and most of these cover the 8I and 8F configurations. Overall length, 250 feet 2 inches, as we said. Overall height, 63 feet 6 inches. The wingspan is 224 feet 7 inches. The total wing area is 5,960 square feet. The wings are swept back at 37.5 degrees, and they have an 8.45 aspect ratio. Overall cabin width, this is the interior volume of the aircraft in terms of habitable space. It is 20 feet exactly. Maximum takeoff weight, 987,000 pounds. And then, of course, the optimal takeoff weight, 485,300 on the 8I, 434,600 pounds on the 8F. Maximum payload on the passenger variant, 167,700 pounds. And the cargo variant, 292,400 pounds. Fuel capacity on the 8I, 63,034 US gallons. On the 8F, that's 59,734 gallons. Cruising speed for the 8I is 0.86 Mach, or 914 kilometers per hour. On the freight variant, that's slightly slower. That is 0.85 Mach, or 903 kilometers per hour. The absolute maximum speed for both variants is 0.9 Mach, or 956 kilometers per hour. Range on the 8I, this is pretty massive, 7,730 nautical miles. Look at the range on the freight variant, though, 4,120 nautical miles. So basically half the range available on the freight variant as is available on the passenger variant. Of course, this is due to the freight variant most likely traveling a bit more heavily laden. Service ceiling on both variants is 43,100 feet, and both variants of the aircraft are running the GE NX2B67 jet engines, which produce 296,000 newtons of thrust at sea level. Stopping the rotation here to take a closer look at some of the details on this Gemini Jets rendition of the 747-8I. What have we got going on here? We'll pan around to the nose here, zoom out ever so slightly. There we go. This is the typically good Gemini Jets livery and details printed onto the fuselage here. Again, none of these are water slide decals in any sense, and neither are the windows perforations in the fuselage. This is all printed on, but as you can readily see, we have got great detail livery-wise and otherwise on board the 747-8. First of all, looking at the nose section, obviously we have got our cockpit windows up top here. We have got a Lufthansa logo below the cockpit windows. We have got our nose section seating and the windows, obviously. Along the side here, we have got air data sensors, pitot tubes, things like that. And then below that, of course, we have got the radar dome over the nose tip, and then down low we have got our nose landing gear, which looks very nice as well. That's plastic wheels and then rubber tires over those plastic wheels, and all of the landing gear, the nose and main gear, they do roll. Moving aft a little bit, we have got our primary entry and exit door, and then just to the right of that we have got Boeing 747-8, and we do have a name of this aircraft listed there. I cannot quite bring it into focus. Unfortunately, it does not quite appear that we're going to do that. However, the name of the aircraft here, I can't quite make it out by eye either. I will figure that out, and we'll do that on the next cut. However, moving aft, you can see the hump over the forward section of the fuselage there, the upper deck on the 747, which has been stretched in the Dash 8 variant. We have an antenna up top here. That looks right. Also, notable difference between this model and the VC-25B model. VC-25 has 3 antennas over top of the hump here. This one simply has 1. So that's the difference between the military spec and the civil spec, undoubtedly. Also, obviously, there is no capability for in-flight refueling on the civilian variant of the 747-8. Moving aft, we have got ourselves our door once again, just in front of the wing here, and of course there's another door on the other side of the aircraft, and then moving midships toward the wing itself. Now, here you can see the redesign of the wing that has been done on the Dash 8 series. As we continue to move along, you can see how thin the wing actually gets as we move outboard, and it's so thin that our camera doesn't know what to focus on. But you can see the redesigned wing on this aircraft. Obviously, the thinner you can make that wing in its cross-sectional area, the more efficient it's going to be, because it's going to be generating less drag and hopefully just as much lift, if not more. And obviously we do have some more lift going on here to increase this aircraft's aerodynamic efficiency, which then means you can burn less fuel to do the same speed and all of that good stuff. Outboard here we have got our inboard and outboard engines here on the left side of the aircraft, and you can see the chevron pattern across the rear sides of both of these engines. And again, these are little vortex generators just trying to induce a little bit of low pressure flow in the engine exhaust so that the engines can get that exhaust air out a little bit more efficiently. They can generate a little bit more thrust, and they can also have less resistance to that exhaust flow exiting the engine so that they will burn more efficiently so that they can save some fuel. Also on the insides of the engines, you can see that we do have the fan blade details in there. We'll get a better look at those as we rotate the model a little bit more. But we do have the fan blades in there. They appear to be separate elements that are just sitting on a little shaft inside the engine. They are not movable, they are fixed, but they are there and they do look very nice. Also, you can see nice detail along the sides of the engine nacelles here, sort of facing the ground. These would be manual control areas where ground crews could get in and open up the start valves and bleed air valves and things like that, just in case that there is any sort of need to start the engines completely from the ground without much input from the cockpit. However, moving back toward the center line of the aircraft, you can see our main landing gear right here. Again, plastic wheels and rubber tires over those plastic wheels. That looks good. Also, you can see where the wing joins up with the fuselage, the wing spar, and wing root area. We have got these spotlights here on the leading edge of the wing, just in that section. That looks very nice. Very, very cool. Now look at the aircraft from the port side, the left side here. Obviously, we have got ourselves the left wing coming straight for us, and you can see the amount of uplift that we have on the wing here. If I try to follow a straight line with my finger toward the camera, you can see that the wing is significantly higher at this point at the wingtip than my finger is. So we have got some significant uplift going on, but it does look prototypically correct. Some people already, from what I have seen of this model, in terms of people's reaction to it, some people are saying that perhaps there's a little bit too much uplift here. I like it. I really do. It kind of shows that the aircraft is trying to launch itself into the sky or something like that. Because obviously the wings would droop a bit on the ground, particularly if the aircraft is fully fueled, because obviously a large amount of fuel is held inside the wing structure itself. But it looks good. And really, I do like it because it does accentuate just how thin this wing actually is. I mean, if I were to apply a reasonable amount of pressure, particularly here right at the wing tip or the trailing edge of the wing in certain places, I would cut myself on this. So it's very, very thin, and it's nicely done, I have to say. Zooming in a little bit more, here are the inboard and outboard engines on the left wing here, and as you can see here, we can swap the focus around and we can start to see those chevron patterns a little bit more clearly on both engines. I like that a lot. Some of the detail on the sides of the engines, as you can see here in this section. Again, just more support for the ground crews, and of course behind all that you can see the main landing gear in a little bit more detail. Looks absolutely wonderful, and yeah, works pretty well as well. Nice rolling wheels on this. The model does roll very freely, so that's all well and good. Moving toward the rear section of the aircraft, there is our full registration here on the left rear of the fuselage. Of course, on the other side you have the same. Registration is Delta, Alpha Bravo, Yankee Charlie, and then of course you can see that we have got ourselves the flags of Germany and the European Union. Trying to get good focus on that. It doesn't seem to want to cooperate. There we go. And there are your flags of Germany and the European Union. Very nice. As we move up, we can start to see the vertical stabilizer, the horizontal stabilizer, the overall empennage area on the aircraft, as well as our elevators here toward the rear for pitch control. But nice shape of the tail. Moving up here, and it's got a very sharp point up to this section, and then a reasonably sharp edge moving down. And of course, this is where the rudder would be. There's our Lufthansa logo, and across the top section of the fuselage, you can see more antennas. There is our forward antenna that we talked about earlier. Moving down the hump, we have got our satellite phone and internet connection antenna right here, and then we have got more antennas, two more antennas moving aft toward the tail. Very nice. Very, very nice indeed. And again, this is the new Lufthansa livery. I like it. A lot of people have said, no, we miss the yellow bird. And okay, I can understand why you may say that, but I don't know. I like it. It just looks clean and somewhat muted, but really I think that's in keeping with the overall aesthetic that Germany in general has these days. They're very conservative, but they get the job done. So again, I do generally appreciate what Lufthansa have done here with the new livery. Again, a lot of people are not liking it as much, but I really don't have any qualms about it. It's all pretty nice as far as I am concerned. Taking a look from the rear of the aircraft now, you can see just how thin those wings are, again, moving outboard toward the wingtips. I really, really like that, and that's probably my favorite overall detail on the model. It's done very, very nicely. Of course, you can see the empennage now in a little bit more detail in terms of the overall configuration. We have got our horizontal stabilizers here, and then, of course, we have got the vertical stabilizer in the tail, incorporating the rudder, quite obviously. Zooming in toward the center line of the aircraft, you can see that we have got our main gear here. Obviously, we've got our outboard gear and our inboard gear affixed directly to the belly of the aircraft. Just as we had on the VC-25B, you can see that the aircraft is not quite sitting square on the main gear. It does appear that the left outboard gear is a little bit shorter than the rest of the gear, particularly the right-hand outboard gear, and you can see that the aircraft does have a little bit of roll dialed in. If I pick up the right wing a little bit here, you can see the aircraft just wants to sort of tilt around and then bring loading into the left-hand outboard gear. But for the most part, that's all right. If I just let it go, the aircraft does want to settle back off to the right. So a little bit of roll dialed in on the ground, but really it's not noticeable unless you are really looking for it. So that's fine in my book, no problems there. Also at the rear of the aircraft, you can see the APU exhaust, and just as we had on the VC-25, we have got an actual pipe integrated into the structure of the fuselage for the APU exhaust. Again, that's the auxiliary power unit to provide electrical power and hydraulic pressure while the engines are shut down on the ground, and typically the APU would be turned off once all 4 engines are started on the 747. You can also see shut lines here for the control surfaces on the empennage, so our elevators in this section, and we don't really have it visible from this side, but we do have the rudder shut lines on either side of the tail through there. Moving toward the left here, outboard, you can see that we have got ourselves the exhaust sides of the engines with the chevron patterning for further sculpting that airflow. It looks very nice. Both engines here on the left wing obviously have that, and then the engines on the right wing will have that same design as well, quite obviously. Nice detail in the internal structure of the engine as well. You can see that they have bothered to put in a few different separate components there, trying to give more detail in the internal structure of the engine on the exhaust side. That looks very nice. Also here you can see shut lines for the slats, flaps, and spoilers. Obviously we've got our speed brake slats going on in this section here of the wing, and then flaperons for attitude control right here, and then obviously our trailing edge flaps, they would come down as the aircraft is traveling at lower speeds, getting configured for landing. Very cool. Very, very cool. Also, you get the decent renderings of the landing gear doors. Obviously, they're in the open configuration here on the ground, but yes, nice landing gear door detail. And overall, it does look quite nice. I'm, again, rather pleased so far with what I see here from Gemini. Now a look at the aircraft from nose on, and here we can see more of that engine fan detail that I mentioned earlier. Have a look here across the right wing. I really like that. I think they did a very nice job with that engine detail on this one, as they did on the VC-25B, but really I like that a lot. You can see the structure of the fan blades there in that initial stage of the turbine. Very cool. Also, the leading edges of the wings look just as nice as the trailing edges, and of course here you could also see where the leading edge slats would be extending out from the bottom of the wing. That's how it works on the 747, so that works nicely. Also, you can see the same landing light, the floodlight details there on either side of the wing's leading edges. That looks good. And of course, moving forward, you've got ourselves the nose landing gear. Speaking of the nose, there is the nose as we move up a little bit better look at the detailing overall on the nose. And you can see that we've got our cockpit windows, we've got wipers underneath, we've got these black areas, these little black dots just below the main windscreen on the aircraft. I think those are misters for spreading de-icing fluid across the windscreen. I don't know if that's for sure, but they're supposed to be there quite obviously, so I would wonder if that is in fact the intended purpose. Nice shape of the nose overall. It tapers nicely to the point just below here on the radar dome, the nose tip itself. That looks very good. And then, of course, moving outboard a little bit more, you can see just generally how the shape of the fuselage tapers down toward the nose. Looks very nice, and I really do have to say that I think they've done a wonderful job on all of that. Moving up a bit, and you can see now overall the detail on the aircraft across the top side, the roof section. That looks very good. Our antenna's coming into focus there. Then the leading edges of the empennage components. Looks very, very cool. I do like all of that. Bring the focus back to the nose. Very nice indeed. I like what I'm seeing here on this Lufthansa 7478 by Gemini. One little thing that I will point out, though, is it may be a little bit difficult to see from this particular angle. I'll try to keep the ground level here so you can get some more context in terms of what you're seeing. But is it just me, or is one of the wings there on the empennage a little bit crooked? I am talking about, from my vantage point, screen right. That's the left-hand control surface on the empennage there where the elevators would be. Is it just a little bit crooked? I'm not entirely certain. I don't know if it's something that my eyes are doing in terms of playing a trick on me, but it may look ever so slightly crooked. And again, I've got the camera basically level so you can get a better context for all of this. I'm not entirely sure. It might be. It wouldn't be very uncommon to see something like that basically on any 1/400 scale model from any manufacturer, because the tolerances are quite small because the overall size of everything is quite small. But just wondering if that is in fact there, I don't really know. It's a little inconclusive for me to say right now. But overall, I've got to say, yeah, they've done a very nice job on this model. It's actually a pretty weighty thing as well. Of course, the construction is all die-cast metal. The wings are affixed directly into the fuselage. It's not a cradle arrangement or anything like that. So it is very nice, very weighty, as I've said. And again, basically all die-cast metal. The only things that are not die-cast on this model are the landing gear, the struts are plastic, and of course the wheels are plastic. The tires are rubber, the engines and the engine mounts are plastic, but everything else, it's die-cast through and through, and it's a weighty thing. So I do like it. I do like their construction, I like their mold, I like basically everything about it, and I even like the new Lufthansa livery. So yeah. So there it was, in 1/400 scale, the Boeing 747-8 by Gemini Jets. A brand new release, May 2020, so basically hot off the press. I think, once again, Gemini Jets have done a decent job with a 1/400 scale model. Some people have been a little bit critical of it in terms of the assembly. Some people have said that there's a little bit too much uplift, too much wing flex there dialed into the main wings on the aircraft. Personally, I think it's all right. I think, yes, there is a bit of uplift there in the wing, but it kind of resembles what the wings would look like as the aircraft is on its takeoff roll and about to rotate to begin its climb out of the runway. So I think it looks well enough, and it accentuates just how thin the wings are on this Dash 8 wing redesign. Again, they've made those wings very, very thin in their cross-sectional profile, just trying to cut down on some drag and further optimize the design of the venerable 747, as Gemini Jets call it in their box description. I like everything else on the aircraft. They've done a nice job on the graphics and livery. I even like the new Lufthansa colors. So yes, I definitely like this one. It's a little bit muted overall in its aesthetic due to the Lufthansa colors, but I think it fits the aircraft well, and it certainly looks nice on display, as you can well see right here. Little assembly things that I've pointed out anyway. The empennage there, one of the wings on the empennage is a little bit more steeply raked in terms of its angle relative to the center line of the fuselage than its counterpart on the other side. However, very minor thing. It's really not noticeable when the aircraft is on display. It's really only noticeable if you are trying to find it. The other little assembly or finishing thing that I will talk about here is on the auxiliary power unit exhaust. It's just a little bit of a jagged edge surrounding that APU exhaust pipe. I think it should be a bit more smoothed out, but again, very, very minor. It's an extremely small detail that you're not really going to notice unless you are looking with a very, very critical eye. But again, for the most part, It's a solid 9.9 out of 10 for me, as far as I'm concerned, on this 1/400 scale 747-8 by Gemini Jets. I am curious to see whether or not Gemini are going to do an 8F variant of the 747. They may have already, and I just haven't seen it. I do know that they're going to be making this aircraft in 1/200, so roughly twice the size of the 1/400 scale. I don't think I'll be getting that one. I don't have any 1/200s as of recording this, and really I'm not too interested in them, only because they're big. They're really big, especially when you start to get into very large aircraft like the 747. They would take up a lot of space. But yes, this is what I have found with the 747-8 by Gemini Jets, and I like it very, very much. Definitely would recommend this one if you are in the market for 1/400 scale die-cast aircraft and you want a 747-8 in your collection. Not going to go wrong here with the Gemini version of this aircraft. Very, very nicely done. Until next time, though, I do thank you all very, very much for watching. Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.